Good morning and happy Sunday. Today is the 12th Sunday after Pentecost. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, welcome to Clayton Valley Presbyterian Church, and those at home, all of you, welcome. Please make sure you sign the membership pads, and if you're not a member, please consider being one. This is an amazing church with a wonderful congregation. We're happy you're here. Do we have any announcements from the floor at this time? And please, if you do, wait for the microphone so we can hear you clearly. No announcements? We have one.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We love clean clothes. We had Clean Start yesterday, and we had 15. We're growing. We could use a little help with some quarters, though. If you get a chance to find some quarters or spare change or anything, it all adds up, and we'd love to have it. But thank you from the Mission Committee and the 3 other churches that come together to help out the homeless and underserved, get their clothing washed. It's a blessing. Thank you.
We have one right over here.
Good morning. I'd like to spread the good news that Jack Flegman, our unsheltered neighbors person, has overcome his recent bout with COVID, and so he's back in gear again, and so we're still looking for oatmeal and small bags of chips and other types of things that we've let the congregation know about. So we're back in service again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I have 2. The annual barbecue picnic will be on Sunday, September 18th. We will have hot dogs and hamburgers, but we do need people to bring salads or dessert. So we have the sign-up sheet in the narthex, so please make sure you sign up. And a very fun event is the 156th Scottish Highland Gathering and Games at the Alameda County Fairground. That will be Saturday and Sunday, September 3rd and 4th, and I'll have information in the narthex for you. And I know Barbara has an announcement.
I do. I've got a long list, so try not to zone out because some of these are good. First of all, I'm still continuing to invite you to sign up for Dinners for 8 at my house. If you'd like to come and meet some of your fellow parishioners, please sign up on the sheets in the narthex. Second, our senior program is restarting at 12 p.m. on Thursday, September 29th. And we hope that you'll sign up for that too. It's going to be a potluck, so we invite you to bring salads and desserts. And Nicole from R&M Gardening is coming to lead our program that day, so it should be good. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we're doing a joint Bible study with congregation that we have been very closely connected to through Belong Circles. So it's B.K. Woodson's congregation, African American congregation, and the 2 dates for the Bible study that we will be doing together is September 8th and September 12th. And I strongly encourage you to let me know if you want to come to those, because it should be great. It will be through Zoom, so you don't have to worry about being exposed or anything. It'll be through Zoom. September 2nd will mark 1 year that Christy, our new Children's Center director, has been here, and we are trying to honor her with a gift card and some flowers. So if you would like to contribute, please give the money to me, because I'll be purchasing the gift card and the flowers. We are putting together a small security team for our church. If you're interested in joining that, please let Barb George know. We will be having a town hall meeting after church next week, very short, to discuss the possibility of monitors in the sanctuary. And I'll explain more about that, but you don't need to be alarmed. We're not moving to a praise team model. This mostly has to do with when we have memorial services. Every single time people ask if they can show pictures of their loved ones, and we can't in here. Our screen is just too bright. So this is an opportunity, and we've been given the money for it. So anyway, we will discuss that more after church, and if you don't like it, that's okay. We won't go that route, but we want to discuss it with you all and see what we want to do. There will also be a new members class after church after that congregational meeting next week. I received a card from the Oakland Gay Men's Chorus asking me to please advertise that they are looking for auditions. So if you're interested in auditioning for that, let me know and I can give you the card. And finally, I am very, very happy this week to welcome our 3 guests who will be leading our panel later on, our theological panel. In your bulletin, you should have my theological question is. If you have not turned in your questions to me, please feel free to write it down. I don't know that we'll get to them all, but feel free to write it down and pass it up at some point before they come up. But the 3 people whom I will introduce again are Ekanatha Pai, who identifies as Hindu, Margaret Niles, who's Buddhist, and Rodney Lemery, who is one of the pastors at the Unitarian Church. So it's very exciting to have you here, and we will welcome you more formally later on. I think that's it for my announcements. Is that enough announcements or anything else? Okay. If there's nothing else, I invite you to prepare your hearts and minds for worship.
Love changes everything, hands and faces, earth and sky.
Love changes everything, how you live and how you die.
Love can make the summer fly, or a night seem like a lifetime. Yes, love changes everything. Now I tremble at your name. Nothing in the world will ever be the same. Love changes everything. Days are longer, words mean more. Love can break the strongest heart. Pain is deeper than before. Love will turn your world around, and the world will last forever. Yes, love changes Nothing in the world will ever be the same. Off into the world we go, planning futures, shaping years. Love bursts in and suddenly all our wisdom disappears. Love, love, love
Makes fools of everyone.
everyone. All the rules we made are broken. Yes, love changes everyone. Live or perish in its with its flames. Love will never, never, never be the same. Love will never, never let you be the same. Love changes everything.
Okay, while they're moving stuff down, our moment of hope this week was sent to me by Barb George, as they often are. She sent me a video, and I'd seen it before, but it's a wonderful story about a little boy, 6 years old, from Savannah, Georgia, named Jaden, who his father died when he was 4, and his mother died when he was 6. So he's really, really struggled, and yet he made the decision that he wanted to bring joy to those people around him. So his aunt, with whom he now lives, he asked his aunt if he could buy little toys, like rubber duckies and little dinosaurs, and he goes around on the streets with his aunt, making sure he's okay, handing to people who aren't smiling a little toy, either a rubber duck or a dinosaur, or just a little toy to bring a smile to their face. And this was a video, and you could see how much some of them smiled, many cried. But they were all touched, and in exchange for the gifts, many of them gave him hugs. Many just said thank you. He said, this little boy, 6-year-old, that he hoped to touch 33,000 people, and the newsman said that by putting it on the news, he undoubtedly had. So that is our moment of hope. People who, in the midst of their own pain, reach out to do good for the world.
Please join me in the call to worship. May the God of all consolation be with you.
And also with you.
May the God of peace and mercy be with you.
And also with you.
May the God of all creation be with you.
And also with you.
May the God of compassion and justice be with you.
And also with you.
May the compassionate one who feels our pain and cries with us in our passion, and the just one who rages with us against the injustice of our experiences, be with you.
And also with you. Amen.
It is time now for our little children and singing them to godly play. This little light of
And as we continue our worship, may God be with you.
The scripture reading for today is Psalm 92, verses 1 to 5, and verses 12 to 15. It is good to praise the Lord and make music to your name, O Most High, proclaiming your love in the morning and your faithfulness at night, to the music of the 10-stringed lyre and the melody of the harp. For you make me glad by your deeds, Lord. I sing for joy at what your hands have done. How great are your works, Lord. How profound your thoughts. The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon, planted in the house of the Lord. They will flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bear fruit in the old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is my wickedness. There is no wickedness in him.
And the second reading for today actually comes from Khalil Gibran's book, The Prophet, and it is on religion. An old priest said, "Speak to us of religion," and he said, "Have I spoke this day of naught else? Is not religion all deeds and all reflection, and that which is neither deed nor reflection, but a wonder and a surprise ever springing in the soul, even while the hands hew the stone or tend the loom? Who can separate their faith from their actions, or their belief from their occupations? Who can spread their hours before God, saying, this for God and this for myself, this for my soul and this other for my body? All your hours are wings that beat through space from self to self. Those who wear their mortality, but as their best garment, were better naked. The wind and the sun will tear no holes in their skin, and the one who confines their conduct by ethics imprisons their songbird in a cage. The freest song comes not through bars and wires, and the one to whom worshiping is a window to open but also to shut has not yet visited the house of their soul, whose windows are from dawn to dawn. Your daily life is your temple and your religion. Whenever you enter into it, take with you your all. Take your plow and the forge and the mallet and the lute, the things you have fashioned in necessity or for delight. For in reverie you cannot rise above your achievements nor fall lower than your failures. And take with you all people. For in adoration you cannot fly higher than their hopes, nor humble yourself lower than their despair. And if you would know God, but not therefore be a solver of riddles, rather look about you, and you shall see the divine playing with your children. And look into space, you shall see mystery walking in the clouds, outstretching arms in the lightning and descending in rain. You shall see God smiling in flowers, then rising and waving hands in trees. So this is, for those of you who are visitors with us, this is an unusual Sunday, but it's a wonderful Sunday. We invite our 3 guests to come on up, and we have a theological panel where we have, again, get to entertain and talk with those who have differing traditions. So if you have written a question that you have not yet sent up, please send it up now, because I'm the keeper of the questions. Okay. And let me introduce them again, and then I would like them to each say something about the core of their religion, the core of their faith, the core of who they are. So you each have a water bottle here, and here's a water bottle for you, and a microphone. Make sure it's on. Good. Okay. So I'm going to start here. This is Ekanatha. Am I pronouncing it right? Ekanatha Pai, and he's Hindu. So go ahead and say something, and then we'll go on down the line.
Okay, I think the question was about the faith and religion, how we follow it, or what the core of it, right? So what we believe in, right? So that's the primary question. So who is God is a typical question that is asked. If I try to answer that, in our traditional Vedic texts, the God's description is clear. Right? So he is incomprehensible, he is abundant, he is infinite, he is everywhere, he is timeless. All these descriptions are given, right? So when we take all these descriptions and put it all together, that's what really God is for us, right? So it is something that is really difficult to comprehend. At the same time, all these different various words that are used kind of give us a sense of what that is or who he is, right? So that's how we see it. And one of the other thing that comes out of it is when we say he is everywhere, what does that mean? So if you ask the question, is he here? The answer is yes, because he is everywhere. Is he in me? The question is he in me? The answer is yes, he is in me. So why is that so? He is everywhere. Is he in the physical objects that we see? The answer is yes, he is, because he is everywhere. Right? So that's what Hinduism gives us. So in reality, Hinduism is a name that is recent for us. The word Hindu stands for the river Sindhu, looked like. Historically, those who are outside of Sindhu area used to refer the river south of that river, people south of that river used to be referred to as Hindus. So, but people, us, call ourselves Sanatana Dharma, right? So the two words are used. Sanatana is eternal, Dharma is that which is right, which is always right. So those are the framework. I briefly say it that way. I'll stop there, and maybe there are more questions.
There will be, no doubt, okay. And then next we have Margaret Niles, who she has 2 hats, but I asked her to wear her Buddhist hat today. So you can say more about that.
Thank you. And thank you so much to your congregation for inviting us. It's really a special reflection on you, so thank you so much. My other hat is I'm an interfaith minister, but that's not what I'm going to be talking about. So as a Buddhist, I am a Zen Buddhist. My particular monastery in Lafayette actually started in Taiwan. So what is our belief? The people often think Buddha is our God, and he's not a God, he's a man. He was a man who was raised in a lot of wealth. He was a prince, and the story goes that he left the castle, he snuck out and discovered birth, illness, death, and dying, and poverty, all these things that he had been protected from, and it really impacted him. He really wanted to know why he didn't know about this, and what do we do about it. He went to so he had lived in the extreme wealth, and then he went to the extreme poverty, traveled as a sadhu, didn't eat, didn't work, own anything. He traveled, and he was really miserable. And what he decided at some point, what ultimately was called the middle way or the middle path, was to not be in the extremes, to not be so poor that you can't think, and to not be so wealthy that you can't see. He ultimately became enlightened, which is what Buddha means. Buddha just means enlightened. So you have the possibility also to become a Buddha, and everyone does. He became enlightened and decided to teach what he discovered in his enlightenment, which are two main things: the Four Noble Truths. Buddhists really love numbers: the 5 precepts, the 4 Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. So everything that's important has a number in front of it. So the 4 Noble Truths that he wanted to share were that suffering exists. Often people think, Buddhists believe, you have to accept like everything is suffering, you're going to suffer, the end. And that's not what Buddhism is for me. That's just the simple fact that suffering exists is the first. The second is that there are causes to our suffering. They're not just spontaneous. And because there are causes to suffering, there's a way to relieve suffering. That's the third noble truth. And we cause the suffering, and the cure is the Eightfold Path. So those are the 4 kind of fundamental core beliefs of Buddhism, is that there's suffering, there's a cause. If there's a cause, there's a cure, and the cure is this. And the Eightfold Path, which I have not memorized, but it's essentially right speech, right thought, right concentration, right work. So choosing a job that doesn't hurt people is part of the Eightfold Path. And there's 8 of them, which if you're really interested, I can look them. I've written them down, but I'm a little nervous, so I don't remember them. So that's one core tenet and belief of Buddhism that's important. And the other is that all sentient beings have Buddha nature within them. And so that's similar to what you were sharing of this is available to everybody, including animals and insects. So all sentient beings have the possibility of, already have Buddha nature, and if you're far from that and suffering, it means you're disconnected from your own Buddha nature. So there's a lot more, but I'll keep it there.
Okay, and then finally, Rodney Lemery, who is one of the pastors at the Universal Unitarianism. Did I say it right? Unitarian Universalism.
Yeah.
There we go, Unitarian. I'm a little nervous too, interestingly, because I want our guests to be, comfortable and happy. Anyway, but Rodney is with me in several other groups, like our C5, which is Contra Costa County clergy cohort, but he's one of the pastors over there in Walnut Creek. Go ahead.
Super happy to be here. Thanks. And much like everyone else, I don't have much to add because they've kind of summarized the Unitarian Universalist perspective of divinity or God. We use different language. It's hard for me to answer the question for Unitarian Universalism. If any of you are familiar with it, it is a varied and diverse faith tradition, so for me to pin down any one belief is really difficult. Why is that? Because we are a covenantal faith. Our congregations are bound to one another not by creed, but by our deeds and our covenants with one another. And our main covenant is one to support and uphold in our daily living 7 principles. We're working on an 8th. But it's a very controversial one, and people can't agree on it, so we only have 7 right now. But the covenant is that we will uphold those 7 principles. And I'm just going to give you the 3 that I think are most important. The rest have to do with democratic processes, etc., and they're not very inspiring, at least to me. The first is that everyone has inherent worth and dignity. So that's our first principle. And then our 7th principle, which I think are the bookends of our faith tradition, is that everything is interconnected. Everything essentially has Buddha, or has the light of God in it. And as a result, we are intricately tied to one another. What happens to you happens to me, and vice versa. And then in the middle of those principles is the search for a responsible search for truth and meaning in your own life. So Unitarian Universalists have these directives to live out their values and hopefully be the light of God in the world. So it's a very action-driven faith tradition. Again, we are, just to give you a bit of history, not a lot, before 1961, there were 2 Christian faiths, the Universalists, who are actually still around as Christians, and the Unitarians, which are actually a very old religion dating all the way back to Transylvania in the 1600s. Those 2 faiths dwindled as our nation grew. Many of the bearers of colonialism, unfortunately, were Unitarians when they came over. And those 2 faiths naturally dwindled in numbers. And in 1961, after our youth groups merged into one youth group, the 2 Christian faiths merged into a new faith called Unitarian Universalism. And I say a new faith because by then we had grown beyond the traditional tenets of Christianity. And so many of our Christian brethren, persons, did not really want us calling ourselves Christians. So we decided that we would, take that mantle off, and we are just Unitarian Universalists now. And that's probably why, if you visit any of our congregations, they're so varied. They're very different. One might hold up a very traditional liturgy, like today I'm very comfortable here, like our liturgy at our church follows the similar pathway. But then you may visit our humanist congregations out on the East Coast, and they very much do not follow a traditional Christian liturgy.
Okay, so let's see, which of these wonderful questions that got sent in do I grab? Okay, prayer and efficacy of prayer. How is it seen in your traditions?
I prepared a few things, few notes. Good that you sent me those questions ahead of time.
I did.
So that it really helps in putting together thoughts and express it. So when we do prayers, every prayer, at the end of every prayer, we recite a prayer song similar to what you guys do. And in that, most of it is in Sanskrit, of course, that Vedic language. And in that we say, Bhakti Shraddha Jnana Vairagya Praptyartam. Its artha means that's what we are gaining from it, right? So it is clearly reciting there what is the benefit of the prayer, right? So Bhakti, Shraddha, Jnana, Vairagya, those are the 4 words used. What I will roughly translate, because Sanskrit words sometimes, there is no equivalent word in English. But when we translate it, sometimes it doesn't equate perfectly, but somewhat closely, right? So bhakti can be translated roughly as unwavering devotion. And shraddha is purity of mind and in all actions. Jnana is knowledge, and knowledge specific to absolute truth, which is sometimes referred to as God, right? And then the 4th one is vairagya. Vairagya has a very nice definition in Yoga Sutras, but I will concisely say vairagya is the removal of cravings and sufferings. So this is the benefit of prayer. That's how it is put. There's also in that same verses, there's one more way to express it. Dharmartha Kama Moksha Chaturvida Phala Punya Siddhi Artham. Siddhi means gaining something, right? So what are those four things? Again, it is four things here. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, right? So why Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha? What are Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha? Again, I have to try to translate it to English. I can think of the closest word for Dharma is righteousness. Artha means wealth. Wealth of all kinds, just not money. Wealth has its own definitions within the framework of Vedic texts. Wealth is expressed in many different ways, but wealth of all kinds. And Kama is fulfillment of desires. All of us have desires as living beings, right? So even as simple as eating is a desire. Yes, it is necessary to live, but sometimes we desire more than just what we need for living, right? So those are the kinds of desires. There are other kinds of desires also. So all kinds of desires. And then on top of all this is the moksha, the finding who we are truly. That's the other aspect of who we are, right? So at some point in our life, we start asking questions, who are we, right? So the answer for that, that's the way that this prayer helps us. So that's what our prayers, we believe that's what the prayers are for.
Awesome. Thank you. Margaret?
There are prayers, many, many prayers. There's, I think, 2,000 sutras in Buddhism. And there's also mantras, which are shorter. There's definitely a belief in all Buddhists. There's many, many Buddhist faiths. Theravada, Mahayana, Soto, Zen. There's just many, many. And they all believe that prayer has efficacy. Just because you're Presbyterian Church, I just wanted to share with you what a prayer in my monastery sounds like. So this is the green Tara. So Buddha manifests in many, many ways, sort of like Allah in Islam. In Islam, there's 100 faces of Allah. And similarly, there are many different Buddhas. So Buddha of compassion, Buddha of healing, Buddha of medicine. So green Tara is the feminine Buddha of compassion. And there is a prayer, a mantra, and it sounds like this: Om Tara Tutara Ture Soha. And what we do is we chant it, and it goes really fast. So it sounds like this: Om Tara Tutara Ture Soha, Om Tara Tutara Ture Soha, Om Tara Tutara Ture Soha, Om Tara Tutara Ture Soha. And like even our Christian prayers, the Our Father, or the prayers that we say at the end of a church gathering, it becomes very rote, and it becomes ingrained in us, and it triggers like a feeling and a way of being in the world. And so for me, that's what the mantra is. The sutras are quite a bit longer, like the Heart Sutra might take 20 minutes to recite. And again, you're in it, and you're attuning the outside world to the inside world. So you're really connecting yourself to the outside world. A lot of what Rodney was sharing about the interconnectedness, that's very much alive in Buddhism, that everything I do impacts you and everything you do impacts me. And because of that, it's called dependent origination. Because of that, we need to care for each other, and we need to make sure what we're doing matters. So, tarutu taruture soha.
You're going to get tired of me saying this, but again, Unitarian Universalists are very varied, so our kinship with prayer is also varied. But we do share some mission statements that are usually mission statements across lots of different UU congregations. And in that common mission statement that is often used, we have the phrase, service is our prayer. And I think if I had to summarize Unitarian Universalist relationship to prayer, in addition to being service-oriented in our praying, it is also about that aspect of prayer that changes the person who's praying. So a deep belief that in the process of our prayer, we change our heart, and hopefully then in a way that allows us to facilitate the answering of that prayer in the world that we live in. So we essentially become the hands of God.
Lovely. Okay, foundational texts. Do you have foundational texts? And if so, how have they changed over the centuries? And Ekanatha, hold the mic a little bit closer.
Okay, so foundational texts. Yes, we do have foundational texts, and every Hindu, even various different beliefs they may have, believes in one common thing, on one common theme. Veda is the knowledge of absolute truth. So that's the basis of that. And when I say that, what does that mean, right? So truth, we need to analyze the truth itself. Truth, some truths are eternally true. It doesn't change. For example, gravitational force, as simple as that one. So any physical object that goes up has to come down because of gravity. But does gravity apply to everything? That's something that is questionable, because air doesn't behave the same way as a solid rock, or fire doesn't behave the same way as. So there are limitations to that. The reason I said that is truth also is sometimes subjective, but there are certain truths that are never changing. So the knowledge that is expressed in Vedas is the truth that never changes. It's always true. So what about those truths which change by time or place? For example, we live in this country, we have obligation to each other, and we have rules, laws based on current time. So for example, another small example, today I carry my cell phone, right? So 200 years ago, cell phone, nobody knew what it is, or it was even hard to imagine such a thing can exist. So with the cell phone, our society has definitely changed. Now we have to change along with that. So certain truths are such that they change based on time and space. So for that, there are amendments, and you always have to be constantly vigilant and make amends to the way you act. So there are such truths which are absolutely true all the time. They're not time-bound. Such truths are expressed. Those are expressed in basic text. And then there are truths that are time and space-bound. And time and space can be even variable, right? So it can be one generation, it can be 1,000 years, it can be several thousand years. So the changes are constant, and based on that, we have to adapt to the change. And but the fundamental truth doesn't change. So that's expressed in Vedas.
Got it. Okay.
There are, the Buddha, everything he shared was verbal. So all of the teachings of Buddha were person to person to person for about 200 years. After 200 years, they began to write down the Buddha's teachings, and not to go into it too much, the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, is a very important text in the Tibetan area. The Tripitaka, I think that's how you say it, is the three baskets. another very important text in Buddhism, and then all the sutras, which talk about core teachings in Buddhism. What people don't often mention is there's something called the Dhammapada, which is a fairly small book, and it's, if you've ever studied the Tao Te Ching, it's like short passages, and it's really, I think, the most accessible text. And I love that for 200 years, nobody wrote anything down, because, of course, 2,500 years ago, that it was difficult to write things down. And in fact, carving into stone was considered a meditation in itself of the prayer that you were putting into stone. So those are the three major texts in Buddhism.
So again, historically, we were two Christian faiths. So we now have and honor 6 sources. So the Christian texts, I'm an old Baptist boy, so I preach a lot from the Christian texts. Jewish texts, Eastern philosophy texts, so we will also pull from sutras or Vedas if there's something that inspires us. We uphold responsible search for truth and meaning, and so the humanist world is one of our sources. So it's science, peer-reviewed, good science. And lived experience, that is also one of our sources. So we believe that you can know things through spiritual experience, and that is just as valid as anything that may have been written down 2,000 years ago.
Okay. So you've sort of touched on this, but the question is your concept of God in your religion. So I think Ekanatha especially touched on it, but yeah, why don't we do it in a different order? So Rodney, why don't we start with you? And
I couldn't agree with Ekanatha's description of God more. So God is love.
Okay. Margaret?
So the question comes up a lot. It's one of the few considered a major religion in the world that's not Abrahamic and really doesn't believe in God, like a one God or a superseding God, or a God that does things to the earth, to humans on earth. But what I have found really touching to me is the Dalai Lama speaks about, the Buddha actually said this, that it doesn't matter. That if you want to be a good person and do good deeds and care for people, God can exist. Yeah, absolutely. You can believe in God. Absolutely. And also, if you struggle with the concept of God, don't let that stop you from really bringing wisdom, compassion, the teachings of morality. So the Dalai Lama and the Buddha both say there's no proof that there's no God. If you want to believe, and you do believe, and you're absolutely sure about it, right on. And if that gives you meaning, that's really important. But that shouldn't stop anybody from pursuing a spiritual path. And also, he has said, you can be a Buddhist Jewish person, you can be a Buddhist Christian, you can be a Buddhist atheist, you can be a Buddhist humanist. So the question of, is there a God, is a little, it's interesting to me, because basically he said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't impact your decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, maybe since I kind of gave the gist earlier on, maybe I can add a few more things to the idea of God and how we perceive it. So one of the other things that is sometimes misunderstood about Hinduism is we worship a lot of different forms of God. Yes? So but the question is it one God or many? So with that, I can tell a small short story, maybe, I don't know how much time we have. So this story is about an elephant and six blind men. So they're trying to understand the elephant, right? So they're blind and they can only perceive part of the elephant. And if I'm touching the tail, I'm expressing it in certain way. And if I'm touching the lower abdomen part of the elephant, I'm expressing elephant as such, right? So, and if I'm touching the tusk, maybe different, maybe ears, it's different. So every part you touch, you feel it somewhat different. But is that elephant? Yes, it is elephant. But is that all elephant? Probably not, because I'm only touching part of the elephant. So the same way, when I say what is God, I said it is infinite, it's everywhere. All these definitions were given. Then how do you comprehend it? So it also says it's aprameya, which means incomprehensible. So when I say that, and then you say, what is God? It becomes difficult to explain. But Veda says you can experience it. You may not comprehend it. You can experience it. That is where love comes in. Absolute pure love. If you express, you do feel it. And you do. There are other ways to feel it also. For example, Veda has somewhat its own way of analyzing things. For example, we have 4 states. One of the state is we are all awake right now, right? We are sometimes going to dream states. Sometimes we go into deep sleep states. And there is the 4th state which we cannot comprehend. So, if we analyze these 4 states itself, right, then it becomes easier to understand what God is. For example, when we are in deep sleep state and we get up, one moment you are in deep sleep and you got up. Then you say, I had really good sleep. But if I ask you again, what do you mean by really good sleep? You cannot explain it. Can you? Or maybe you can all say, all that you can see is, I had good sleep. So similarly, comprehension is something that is limited, but experience can be more pronounced. Or it is unexplainable, but when you feel it, you know what it is. It's like, another example, I will say mango. It's different kind of example, but it's in the similar realm, right? So if I say mango, if you have never, ever seen a mango or tasted it, what impression or what comes into your mind? Absolutely nothing, only the word mango. But if you had picked up a mango, you know what the texture is, how it feels, what it is, and then if you have tasted it, you know how it tastes, all of that experience. Now, is it necessary, if somebody has experienced mango, is it necessary for them, somebody else need to explain to them? No. So experience is such that once you experience it, you know it, but if somebody asks you to explain it, it's unexplainable. But we can put words to it, but that always has a limit. So God for us is that. And that's what Veda tries to say. And also, it not only says that, but it gives you a specific path. Follow this path, and you will find it. You will experience it. Find it in the sense of experience, not comprehension.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing. There are definitely, when you ask the question, is there a God, do we believe in God? I think of it in terms of the Christian or even the Hindu belief of God. And Tibetan Buddhism has many gods, but they're more like Greek gods, where they're foilable. There are the wrath of God, that kind of thing. And they're not, they're in these other realms. So there's 6 realms that's not the earth. And I was traveling with my husband in Bhutan a few years ago, and we were in a monastery sitting on the floor, and a monk who had studied for 25 years how to read you, past lives, he had the nerve to tell me that my husband had been a demigod in a previous life, which was really disappointing to me because I wasn't. And so talk about the Buddha being in the moments in your life that are most frustrating. I was like, okay, ego, no self. But so there are gods, but they're not the kind of gods that I think the question was talking about.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to jump down. How can the different faith practices work together to find solutions to the world's problems when those faith practices seem to have so many different philosophies? And Margaret, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. So the question itself was interesting to me because I actually think the major world faiths and even the not major world faiths have a lot in common. I think in the end, right, it's about love. It's about being connected to yourself and to the world around you. Do unto others as you want done to you is the golden rule in almost every religion and spiritual path I've ever heard of. So the first answer is I actually think we have a tremendous amount of connection and care and love and desire for the world to be better and for there to be less suffering. We use the word suffer a lot, but also, you talk about suffering and the relief of suffering with different languaging, and I don't see it different at all. I'm a member of the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County, and we even have a program where we invite different churches to come together to do one volunteer effort. So we're getting to know each other, we're getting to know our faiths, we're getting to know how we operate in a spiritual way. So I think there's so much out there available for us to continue to make a difference and to hold up our own spiritual path that we hold. You hold your spirituality so deeply. It's so important to you, and it's important to me, and that we have in common. So that's the first thing. And the second is, in 1966, Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a Vietnamese Buddhist, he started something called engaged Buddhism, which again is a lot like what you were sharing, Rodney, where it's not about being a Buddhist and going up to a mountain and being in a cave and praying for the relief of all suffering. It's about putting on your shoes and getting out there and sitting on the bench with a homeless person and using their name and giving them some time to feel the dignity that is very hard for them to feel. That's engaged Buddhism. And Buddhism is not they have no copyright on that. So in terms of this question, I think if you want to find other religions, the Parliament of World Religions is the most incredible. Every 2 or 3 years we gather, and there's 7,000 people of every religions you've never heard of, and boy, are they doing work together. We are looking for each other. That's what we're doing. We're looking for each other.
Okay, you can note that.
Yeah, I think it's very nicely said. Even Vedic, if you look at fundamental basic idea of Vedic text is unity is universal, right? So God is universal. And we call it Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, what it means is the entire world is a family. The moment we start to realize that how connected we are, whether we like it or not, or whether we recognize it or not, we have the only one home, that is Earth. It's common for us. We eat the same kind of food. We have the same common goal. Everybody has the same ideas, basic ideas. We need to have dignity and respect for everyone. And it does not take any denominations. It has to be pure. It's humanity. And I see the role of religion here as a common thread that binds us all together. However, the way, it's not sometimes I see religion as a tool, right? It's always, the tool is not the issue. It's the way that tool is used is the issue. So, if that is properly understood, and if all of us clearly have this common goal of humanity, and there is, again, like I said, I think we need to highlight, like Margaret said, so we need to highlight the commonalities, and there are so many of them. But instead, we prefer to highlight the differences. That's unfortunate. And so, the moment we start recognizing that fact, we have so much in common, and we are all going towards the same direction, yet our paths might be different. So, for example, going to the peak of Diablo here, there is not one single route. You can walk, you can drive, you can fly. There are many different ways, and even if you go from San Ramon, there is a different way to go. From Clayton, there is a different way to go. That doesn't mean that the peak is different. We're all going to the same peak. Why not highlight that fact? So I think the moment we do that, all these problems will go away. Unfortunately, there are so many people, so many of our leaders who are very happy with highlighting the differences. That's unfortunate.
Thank you. Rodney?
Well, within our congregations, we're already very religiously diverse. We have Catholics that come to our Unitarian Church on Sundays after going to Mass on Fridays. We have Buddhists. We have a number of Buddhists. We have a massive amount of Jewish people in our congregations as well. And we have some Hindus as well. So we have learned that, much like these wonderful people have already said, is that when you let go of your ego and you don't try to think that your way is the only way to a truth, then you open yourself up to being a little more capable of sitting in a dinner or in a room and hearing and listening. I mean, let's face it, you're all doing that work right now, right? I mean, you're all here. I haven't seen anyone get up and run out. You're doing the very work that opens your heart up into engaging with groups who may not share the exact dogma of your faith that transforms who you are. So just being willing to do the kind of work that you're doing here, it's very promising.
Okay, so we have a bunch more questions, but we unfortunately are out of time. Yeah, so I want to thank you. Can you all give them a... And I'm hoping that after worship you might stay a little bit so people can talk to you individually and ask their questions. I'm so very grateful to each of you. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, in the interest of time, I think maybe we should just sing, how about verse 2? Let's do 1 and 2, verse 1 and 2. Seated. Instead of a moment of thanks today, I think I want to lift up some of the prayers that have come in this week, which are important for you all to have in your mind. So please bear with me for a moment, and then we'll take our offering. First, I wanted to let you know that Gwen Johnson's father passed away this morning, so please send prayers to her. God, in your grace. Sharon's ex-husband, George, has been having strokes, so praying for him. God, in your grace. Sharon's good friends, Andy and Mary Beth, lost their son in his 40s last week. God, in your grace. And then I got a bunch of joys also. And I'm going to just group them all together, just so you know. Sharon's grown nephew, Keith, who we've been praying for, has been improving. He needs to have another surgery, but prayers for him. Sharon's daughter, Jody, and her family moved into their new home, and it is lovely. Sharon's great-granddaughter, she's my prayer guru, so she sends me all sorts of stuff. Turned 3 this week, so congratulations. Grandson George graduated from high school. Her health continues to improve. Also, I heard from Rick Hurd and wanted to share with you some of what he said, because he says it himself better than I could. He said, I've been asked by my newspaper to write a first-person retrospective on the A's 20-game winning streak 20 years ago. They're celebrating the team that did it on Sunday, so I'll get to see them. You can also add that as a prayer. This is 2 life-saving miracles I've had in my life. My father had one too. And his son, which is even bigger, Clay, has hit 6 months sober. So that is huge. So prayers of thanksgiving for that. God, in your grace. We will do a prayer at the end of the offertory, so I think right now we will collect in thanksgiving our offerings.
join me in the prayer of thanksgiving. We give you what is already yours, whatever it be that we are giving.
All that we have is yours alone, a trust from you, O God. We return it with joy
and gratitude.
And again, interest of time, let's just do the first verse. I invite you to sit for a moment.
I see trees of green and roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the brightness of day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies grow. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
charge and benediction. Life is short and it's full of diversity. It's full of differences. So walk with an openness. Walk with a heart open to learning, a mind open to loving. Walk with intention and with peace. And may the God who has many names be with you and bless you this day and forevermore. Amen. Peace be with you. Let us pass that peace to one another.